Welcome to Cheating Story Exposed. Please subscribe. My name is Douglas, and I'm 72 years old. For the past 40 years, I've been sharing stories, first as a journalist, then as a father, and now as someone who learned the hardest lesson life can teach. Sometimes the people you love most are the ones who respect you least. What I'm about to tell you isn't about revenge. It's about dignity, boundaries, and the moment I finally understood that love without respect is just manipulation with a prettier name. The coffee was still hot when it hit my face. Not warm. Not lukewarm. Hot enough that I felt my skin tighten immediately. Hot enough that instinct made me close my eyes. Hot enough that for 3 full seconds, I couldn't think about anything except the burning sensation spreading across my cheeks and dripping down my collar. When I opened my eyes, my daughter Veronica was standing across the kitchen island from me, her hand still gripping the empty mug, her chest heaving like she'd just finished a sprint. Her face was flushed, not with shame, not with regret, but with fury. "I can't believe you," she hissed. "After everything I've done for you, after all the times I've checked on you, visited you, pretended to care about your boring stories, and you can't do this one simple thing for me." I reached for the kitchen towel hanging near the sink, moving slowly, deliberately. The coffee had already soaked through my shirt, one of the good ones, blue Oxford cloth that my late wife Helen had bought me for our last anniversary together. I dabbed at my face, feeling the heat radiating from my skin, and looked at my daughter. She was 47 years old, beautiful, accomplished, educated. She had her mother's eyes and her grandfather's stubborn chin. I'd watched her grow from a colicky infant into an honors student, from a bright college graduate into a successful marketing executive. I'd walked her down the aisle at her wedding. I'd held her hand through her divorce. I'd co-signed her first apartment lease when her credit wasn't quite good enough, and now she'd thrown coffee at me because I wouldn't give her my credit card. "Veronica," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the throbbing in my cheeks, "I think you should leave." Her eyes widened, not with remorse, with disbelief. "Leave. This is my father's house. I have every right to be here. You can't just kick me out because you're being selfish." "I'm not kicking you out. I'm asking you to go. There's a difference." She slammed the mug down on the granite counter. "Fine, fine, but don't come crying to me when you're lonely and need someone to drive you to your doctor's appointments. Don't call me when you fall and can't get up. Don't expect me to be there when I die." I finished for her, folding the towel carefully. "Is that what you were going to say?" She had the decency to look away. "I didn't mean it like that." "Yes," I said, "you did, and that's why you need to leave." She grabbed her purse, a Gucci bag I'd bought her for Christmas 3 years ago, and stormed toward the front door. But before she left, she turned back, her hand on the doorknob. "You're going to regret this, Dad. You're going to die alone in this house, and nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to remember you as anything but a bitter old man who pushed away the only family he had left." The door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames in the hallway. I stood in my kitchen, coffee-stained and trembling, not from fear, but from something I hadn't felt in decades, pure, crystallized clarity. To understand what happened next, you need to understand how we got here. Helen died 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, fast and merciless. We'd been married for 43 years, and I'd loved her for 45. Since the day I met her at a Columbia journalism conference where she was covering healthcare policy, and I was a crime reporter trying to figure out if I had a future in the business. She made me better, smarter, kinder. She taught me that strength wasn't about dominating others. It was about knowing when to bend and when to stand firm. She raised Veronica while I traveled for stories, and she never complained, never made me feel guilty, never weaponized her sacrifices. When she died, I was lost. Veronica stepped in immediately. She called every day. She came over twice a week. She helped me sort through Helen's things, organized the memorial service, held my hand during the will reading. I was grateful. I thought we were growing closer, that tragedy had given us a second chance at the relationship we'd never quite managed when I was always chasing deadlines and she was always chasing her own ambitions. But then the requests started. First, it was small. "Dad, can you help me with my electric bill this month? I'm a little short." Of course I could. She was my daughter and she'd just spent weeks helping me navigate grief. Then it was, "Dad, my car needs new tires. Could you cover it? I'll pay you back." She never paid me back, but that was fine. Money was just money then. "Dad, I'm going on a trip with some friends to Napa. Could you lend me $2,000? I really need this break." I sent her $3,000. She deserved joy then. "Dad, my apartment building is doing renovations and raising rent. I need $5,000 to cover the difference until I can figure out my budget." I sent it the same day. Then it never stopped. Over 3 years, I gave Veronica close to $90,000. Sometimes she asked directly. Sometimes she hinted. Sometimes she just mentioned a problem and waited for me to offer a solution. I kept a quiet spreadsheet. Old journalist habits die hard, but I never mentioned it to her. Parents help their children. That's what we do. But 6 months ago, something changed. I was at the bank, depositing a check from a freelance article I'd written for a legal journal, when my account manager, a sharp woman named Patricia who'd handled my accounts for 15 years, asked if she could speak with me privately. "Mr. Whitmore," she said carefully, "I need to ask you something, and I apologize if I'm overstepping, but have you been making mortgage payments on a property on Maple Ridge Drive?" I frowned. "No, I paid off this house 20 years ago." She opened a folder. "According to our records, you've been making monthly payments of $2,800 to Silverton Property Management for the past 3 years. It's been automatically deducted from your account." My chest went cold. "Show me." She turned the computer screen toward me. There it was, 36 months of payments, totaling just over $100,000, going to an account I'd never authorized. "Is there any way to find out which property this is for?" I asked quietly. Patricia made some calls. 20 minutes later, she had an address, 447 Maple Ridge Drive, Unit 12B, Veronica's apartment. I didn't confront her immediately. 40 years as a journalist taught me something valuable. Get the full story before you ask the questions that will make people defensive. I went home and opened my computer. I'm 72, not dead. I know how to use search engines and property databases. Within 2 hours, I'd pieced together the truth. 3 years ago, shortly after Helen died, Veronica had added me as a co-signer on her lease. "Just in case something happened," she'd said at the time. I'd signed the paperwork without reading it carefully. I was grieving, and she was my daughter. I trusted her. What I didn't know was that she'd also set up automatic payments from my account to cover her rent. Not part of it. All of it. $2,800 a month every month for 3 years. But here's what made it worse. Veronica made $78,000 a year. I'd seen her tax returns when she'd asked me for advice during a particularly complicated filing year. She could afford her rent. She'd been paying her rent before Helen died. She didn't need my money. She just wanted it. I spent the next week quietly gathering information. I called Patricia and had her pull records on every transaction I'd sent Veronica. I made a timeline. I documented every request, every emergency, every reason she'd given for needing help, the electric bills she couldn't afford. She'd posted photos on social media from a spa weekend the same week, the car tires. She'd bought a Peloton bike 2 days after I sent the money, the Napa trip. She'd stayed at a resort that cost $400 a night, the rent increase. There had been no rent increase. I called the building management. They confirmed her rent had been the same for 4 years. My daughter hadn't been struggling. She'd been lying, and I'd been too blinded by love and loneliness to see it. I didn't plan to confront her the day she threw coffee at me. I'd actually invited her over to talk calmly, privately, the way adults should handle these things. I'd prepared myself for denials, excuses, maybe even tears. What I wasn't prepared for was her sense of entitlement. She'd arrived at my house around 2 in the afternoon, breezing through the door with that bright, performative energy she always brought when she wanted something. "Hey, Daddy," she'd said, kissing my cheek. "Thanks for inviting me over. I've been meaning to catch up." We'd made small talk for maybe 10 minutes before she got to the point. "So listen, I have a situation. You know that promotion I told you about? Well, it's going to happen, but they want me to do some professional development training first. It's expensive, like $8,000, but it's basically required if I want to move up. Could you help me out? I'll pay you back as soon as I get the raise." I looked at her across the kitchen island. She was smiling expectantly, the same smile she'd used when she was 7 and wanted a puppy. "Veronica," I said. "Carefully, I need to talk to you about money." Her smile faltered slightly. "What about it?" "I've been reviewing my finances recently, and I've noticed some discrepancies. I wanted to ask you about them." She laughed, too loud, too quick. "Discrepancies? Dad, are you sure you're reading your statements correctly? I know technology can be confusing at your age." "I'm 72, not senile." My voice was sharper than I'd intended. "I found the automatic payments you set up from my account. $2,800 a month for 3 years. The color drained from her face, but only for a second. Then her expression hardened into something I'd never seen before, cold calculation. "You're upset about that, after everything Mom left you, after the house is paid off and you're just sitting on all that money doing nothing with it. I'm your daughter, I needed help." "You didn't need help, you make a good salary. You were paying your own rent before your mother died." "So what, you're rich, Dad." "You have more than enough. Why should you live in this big house with all this money while I'm struggling to build a life?" "You're not struggling, you're lying." That's when her face twisted into something ugly. "How dare you, after I've spent years taking care of you, making sure you're not lonely, visiting you when I have better things to do. I never asked you to visit me out of obligation." "Well, what else would it be? You think I enjoy listening to your old war stories and your outdated opinions. You think I like pretending you're still relevant." Each word was a knife, precise and deliberate. I took a slow breath. "Veronica, I want you to know that I love you. I always will, but I can't continue to enable this behavior. I've canceled the automatic payments. I won't be lending you any more money." Her face went red. "You can't do that. I need that money. I've budgeted for it. I've made commitments based on having it." "Then you'll need to adjust your budget. Give me your credit card." She held out her hand. "Right now, I need to make a payment that's due today and I don't have the funds. Give me your card." "No." That's when she grabbed the coffee mug from the counter, my coffee that I'd been drinking, and threw it at my face. After she left, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, the wet towel pressed against my burned skin. My face hurt. My chest hurt more. I thought about calling someone, a friend maybe, or my brother in Seattle. But what would I say? My daughter assaulted me because I stopped giving her money? It sounded absurd. It sounded like the kind of story I used to write about back when I covered domestic disputes and family court cases. I never thought I'd be living in one. Instead, I made a phone call to Patricia at the bank. "Patricia, it's Douglas Whitmore. I need to make some changes to my accounts." Over the next hour, I restructured everything. I removed Veronica from every account where she'd been listed as a potential beneficiary or contact. I changed my passwords. I set up alerts for any unusual activity. I asked Patricia to flag any attempts to access my accounts or request information. Then I called my attorney, Gerald Hoffman, a man I'd known since law school when I'd covered a series of civil rights cases, and he'd been a young public defender with more passion than clients. "Gerald, I need you to review some documents for me, and I think I need to update my will." He met me at my house the next day. I showed him everything, the bank records, the timeline, the evidence of Veronica's deception. He listened without interruption, his expression growing grimmer with each page. "Douglas," he said finally, "I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Do you want to pursue legal action against your daughter?" "Already thought about it." "No. She's still my daughter, but I do want to protect myself. Then we need to make some changes. First, your will." Currently, Veronica inherits everything: the house, your investments, your retirement accounts. Given what you've shown me, I'd strongly recommend reconsidering that arrangement. I nodded slowly. What do you suggest? Leave the house to a charitable organization. Establish a trust for any grandchildren you might have in the future, but with strict conditions. Make it clear in the will that Veronica's behavior led to this decision. It's not about punishment, it's about honesty. And the apartment? I asked. The one I've been paying for? Gerald smiled grimly. That's the interesting part. Let me make some calls. What Gerald discovered was almost poetic in its irony. The property management company that owned Veronica's building had been looking to sell for months. They had 12 units, including Veronica's, and they wanted out of the landlord business. The asking price was reasonable, actually, quite reasonable, given the location and condition of the building. How much? I asked Gerald. 1.2 million. It's a good deal. The units are all occupied, generating steady income. You'd have positive cash flow immediately. I thought about my investments. I'd been conservative my whole life. Journalist salaries don't make you rich, but Helen and I had saved carefully, invested wisely, and paid off our mortgage early. When Helen died, her life insurance and retirement accounts had come to me. I wasn't wealthy by mansion and yacht standards, but I had options. Make an offer, I told Gerald. But I don't want Veronica to know I'm the buyer. 6 weeks later, I owned the building where my daughter lived. Veronica didn't call, didn't text, didn't apologize. I didn't reach out either. I wanted to see how long she could last without access to my money. Part of me hoped she'd contact me with a genuine apology, that maybe the shock of losing her financial safety net would force some self-reflection. But 3 months passed and nothing. I settled into routine. I wrote more articles, op-eds about aging, pieces about family dynamics, essays about the changing nature of journalism. My work was still being published, still being read. I wasn't irrelevant, despite what Veronica had said. I took a watercolor class at the community center. I joined a book club. I volunteered at the library, helping older adults learn to use computers. Turns out, being 72 doesn't mean you stop growing. It just means you grow differently. Gerald called me every few weeks with updates about the building. Everything was running smoothly. The tenants paid on time. Maintenance was minimal. I was making a profit of about $4,000 a month after all expenses, including Veronica's rent, which she paid like clockwork every first of the month. It was almost funny. She was unknowingly paying rent to the father she'd assaulted and abandoned. Every month, part of her salary was going directly into my account. The building manager didn't know I was the owner. Gerald had set up an LLC that handled everything. As far as anyone knew, nothing had changed, but I knew. And eventually, Veronica would too. The moment came during what should have been a routine building inspection. Arranged it through Gerald. All property owners need to do periodic safety checks, make sure everything is up to code. I wasn't planning to attend personally, but Gerald suggested I might want to be there just in case. I knew what he meant. Just in case Veronica was home. Just in case she put the pieces together. The inspection was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at 10. I arrived at the building with Gerald and the inspector, a thorough woman named Claire who'd been doing this work for 30 years. We'd already checked 3 units when we reached 12B Veronica's apartment. The building manager, a friendly man named Ron, knocked on the door. "Ms. Whitmore, it's Ron from management. We have the inspection scheduled for this morning. I sent you an email last week." The door opened. Veronica stood there in yoga pants and an expensive athletic top, her hair in a messy bun, holding a green smoothie. She looked annoyed until she saw me standing behind Ron. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, anger, and finally calculation. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "Good morning, Veronica." Ron looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. "You two know each other." "She's my daughter," I said calmly. "I don't understand," Veronica said, her voice tight. "Why are you here with the building inspector?" I didn't answer immediately. Claire and Gerald had already moved past us into the apartment, checking smoke detectors and carbon monoxide sensors. Veronica stepped into the hallway, pulling the door partially closed behind her. "Dad, seriously, what's going on? Is this some kind of weird stalking thing? Because I told you I needed space." "You needed space," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" Her jaw clenched. "I'm not having this conversation right now. I'm busy." "Too busy to talk to the person who owns your apartment building," the words hung in the air between us. I watched her face as understanding slowly dawned, fighting against denial. "What are you talking about?" "I own this building, Veronica. I bought it 3 months ago, which means for the past 3 months you've been paying rent to me." Her mouth opened, then closed. Her smoothie trembled slightly in her hand. "That's not possible." "It's very possible. Would you like to see the paperwork?" Gerald emerged from the apartment right on cue, holding a folder. "Everything looks good in there, Mr. Whitmore. No issues with this unit." "Mr. Whitmore?" Veronica's voice was barely a whisper. She looked at Gerald, then at me, then at Ron. "You're the new owner? You're the person I've been paying rent to?" "That's correct." She laughed, a high, brittle sound that echoed in the hallway. "This is insane, this is." "Actually insane. You bought my building. As what, some kind of revenge?" "Not revenge, protection. I wanted to make sure you were taken care of, even after you made it clear you didn't want me in your life." "Taken care of?" Her voice rose. "You call this taking care of me? You're spying on me. You're controlling where I live. You're probably going to evict me now, right? That's your big power play." "I'm not going to evict you," I said calmly. "As long as you pay your rent on time and follow the lease terms, you can stay as long as you want. That's how rental properties work." Her face flushed dark red. "I can't believe you. I can't believe you do something this manipulative, this controlling." "I never asked you to stay here," I interrupted. "You're welcome to move any time you'd like. Break your lease if you want to, though you'd forfeit your security deposit and you'd still owe rent through the end of your lease term. That's standard." She stared at me and I could see her mind working, calculating her options, running through scenarios. Finally, she said, "How much of my rent money are you keeping?" "All of it. It's my building." "But you don't need the money. This is financial abuse." I almost laughed, almost. "Veronica, let me be very clear. You threw coffee at me because I wouldn't give you my credit card. You stole over $100,000 from me through fraudulent automatic payments. You called me irrelevant and told me I'd die alone. And now you want to accuse me of financial abuse because I'm operating a legitimate rental property that you chose to live in." She had no answer for that. Ron was staring at his shoes. Claire and Gerald had moved down the hallway, giving us privacy. "I loved you," I said quietly. "I still do. But love doesn't mean letting someone destroy themselves with entitlement and dishonesty. Maybe one day you'll understand that. Maybe one day you'll actually apologize, not because you want something, but because you mean it. Until then, your rent is due on the 1st of every month, just like everyone else in this building." I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard her apartment door slam hard enough to shake the walls. That was 8 months ago. Veronica still lives in the apartment. She pays her rent on time every month. She hasn't contacted me, and I haven't contacted her. Ron tells me she's a quiet tenant, no complaints, no issues. Sometimes I drive by the building, not to check on her, but because it's on the way to the library where I volunteer. I wonder if she thinks about what happened. I wonder if she's learned anything. I wonder if, somewhere beneath the anger and entitlement, there's still the little girl who used to sit on my lap while I read her bedtime stories. But I don't dwell on it. That's the thing about reaching your 70s. You learn that not every relationship can be saved, and not every wound will heal the way you hope. You learn that love sometimes means stepping back, setting boundaries, letting people face the consequences of their choices. Rewritten my will. The house will go to a literacy foundation that helps elderly adults learn to read and write, something Helen always cared about. My investments will fund scholarships for first-generation college students studying journalism. The rental property will be sold after my death, with the proceeds going to a shelter for elderly people escaping abusive living situations. Veronica isn't mentioned in the will at all. Gerald tried to suggest leaving her a token amount with an explanatory note, but I declined. She doesn't need my money, and she doesn't need my final words. She needs to build her own life with her own resources based on her own merit. Maybe that makes me harsh. Maybe some parents would have forgiven and forgotten, would have continued enabling and hoping for change. But I spent 40 years as a journalist learning one fundamental truth. People show you who they are through their actions, not their words. And when someone shows you they see you as nothing more than an ATM machine, you have to believe them. The coffee burn healed after a few weeks. Left a small scar on my left cheek, barely visible unless you're looking for it. Sometimes I touch it and remember that morning, not with anger, but with something closer to sadness. Sadness for the relationship we could have had. Sadness for the daughter I thought I knew. Sadness for the desperate way people will hurt those who love them when they feel their power slipping away. But mostly, I touch that scar and feel grateful. Grateful that I learned the truth before it was too late. Grateful that I still had the strength to set boundaries and protect myself. Grateful that being 72 doesn't mean accepting mistreatment just because it comes from family. I'm sharing this story not because I want sympathy or validation. I'm sharing it because I know I'm not alone. I hear stories every week at the library, at the book club, at the community center. Stories of adult children who treat their aging parents like piggy banks. Stories of families who suddenly reappear when there's an inheritance to fight over. Stories of elderly people who give and give and give until they have nothing left, not even their dignity. And I want those people to know something. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, even if that someone is your child. You raised your children. You gave them life, education, opportunity. You loved them through their mistakes and celebrated their successes. But at some point they become adults responsible for their own choices. And if those choices include taking advantage of your love, lying to you, disrespecting you, or worse, you have the right to step back, not with cruelty, not with revenge, but with dignity and boundaries. Age doesn't make you powerless. It doesn't make you irrelevant. It doesn't mean you have to accept whatever treatment people decide to give you just because your bones are older and your reflexes are slower. You've earned your wisdom. You've earned your peace. You've earned the right to live your remaining years with respect and autonomy. If someone in your life, family or otherwise, refuses to give you those things, then maybe it's time to own the building they live in. Metaphorically speaking, or literally, it's your choice. The scar on my cheek catches the light sometimes when I'm teaching computer classes at the library. People occasionally ask about it. I tell them I had a small accident with hot liquid. It's not a lie exactly. It's just not the whole truth. The whole truth is this: my daughter threw coffee at me and I used it as a wake-up call. I set boundaries. I protected my assets. I rebuilt my life on my own terms. And I refused to let anyone, even my own child, convince me that age made me less deserving of respect. I don't know if Veronica and I will ever have a relationship again. Part of me hopes that someday she'll knock on my door with a genuine apology and a willingness to do the hard work of rebuilding trust. Part of me has made peace with the possibility that day will never come. Either way, I'm okay. I have friends, purpose, activities that bring me joy. I'm writing more than I have in years. I'm learning to paint. I'm teaching people skills they need. I'm making a difference in my community. And every month, when the rent payments come in from all 12 units in my building, including Unit 12B, I'm reminded that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living well and refusing to be anyone's victim. My name is Douglas Whitmore. I'm 72 years old, and I still have a lot of living left to do. Thank you for listening. And please, subscribe to Cheating Story Exposed for more stories of justice, dignity, and the power of setting boundaries at any age.